Erikson's fifth stage is known as identity versus role confusion. And from about the age of 12 until 20, the adolescent develops coherent and stable identity. They explore themselves on all levels, sexually, their careers, their friends. All of this amazing stuff starts to come into play of who you are as a person and who you want to be for the rest of your life. And I think it's really interesting to analyze this fifth stage because it's such a long period of time. It's 8 years of change and actions and events that can morph you into a new person. And I think because this stage for me was so wild, it really created a person that I had no clue I would end up being. From ages 12 and 13, this is when it really began. My parents actually decided to get a divorce at this point. The verbal and physical abuse from both sides just became too much to handle, and my mom had actually initiated the divorce, and she'd asked me, are you okay with this? Are you going to be okay with me and your dad not being together? And I can clearly remember the sigh of relief that I had felt, that I would no longer be in a house where on Fridays when my father came home from work, it would be instant beers, instant partying, and instant fights. It was a domino effect. And for years and years and years, I became almost accustomed and comfortable with this vicious cycle of abuse that was in my household. Because I lived in such a nice part of town. I lived in a beautiful home on a golf course, like I had said. And it was just like everything that I had known was about to change. But I was happy. I was purely serene with the idea of my parents getting a divorce. But that serenity truly left very quickly. My parents' divorce was very sticky. It was very ugly. Sheriffs were involved. A lot of verbal threats, a lot of crazy ideas. And the worst part of it to me was the night when my parents made me sit down in front of both of them and tell them who I was going to choose, who was I going to live with, and this just the amount of stress that was put on me in this situation really jump started the anxiety and depression that I think I feel now. In the end, I did choose my mom, but we did not move far. We only moved on the other side of the community that I lived in, so I was only not even 5 minutes away from my father. But the whole life change started because my mom had never worked. My mom had never done anything the entire marriage. She was a stay-at-home mother, and so now my mom had to go back to work with no college degree. So she began working as a cook at the marina, the restaurant that was inside of the community, and it was great for her. My mom loves to cook, so that was really beneficial, but it was also detrimental. In the first year of the divorce is when my mom started to work a lot, and I was home by myself at the ripe age of 13, and that's really when everything kind of started to go downhill for me. I started to smoke marijuana and hang out with kids that were a lot older than me and run around the community and do things that 13-year-olds really do not do. And I think the reasoning behind it was because it was an escape. I was free from the drama and the what ifs about my mom and dad and being pulled back and forth between both of them because they hated each other and I was in the middle. And the drugs and the friends and the laughs, all of that was an escape. And that escape slowly turned into a relationship with a gentleman that was 5 years older than me. So I'd kept it secret. We had kept it secret for years, up until I'd got into high school my freshman year. And that was kind of the breaking point for that relationship. But that relationship was another outlet for me. When my parents got a divorce, that's really when my mom's drinking became apparent. My mom had always drank, but the alcoholism, that trait of her really shined. through. And my mom began drinking every night and became violent and was incoherent and cried, and all of these crazy emotions just came through like a twister. And it was just me and her. So in that state, I was the victim. And instead of learning who I was as a person and going through this identity path, I was having to stick up for myself against a drunk woman who wasn't even my mom at that point. And that alcoholism is still an issue today. It's still something that we as a family fight for my mom. It's really something that has molded me into the person I am and made me think the way I think about alcoholism and about, abuse and addiction and things like that. And really that has shaped to be who I wanted to be career-wise. It's kind of changed my idea that maybe the medical field, which is what I studied in school doing dual enrollment and my CNA during high school, has really made me go more towards the human mind and the psychology and the how people think. And so I think career-wise, in this stage, which I'm about to come out of, I'm about to turn 21, it's really apparent. But on top of the relationships and the alcoholism that started at the beginning stages of the 5th stage in Erikson's theory, I slowly began to fall in love with someone else in high school after me and this other gentleman had broken up. So about the age of 15, I met a guy, and we were together, and our lifestyles were completely different. He came from a poor family that was based on drugs and crime, and I came from a country club lifestyle. And the thing that drew me to him was his independence, his ability to do things on his own. At 15, I wasn't working, surely, but he was, and that was attractive to me. And I think because I felt like I didn't have any stability at home, I almost craved someone to take care of me. My mom was, of course, not taking care of me at this point, so I wanted someone to be there for me. And about the time that this had happened, my mom had already gotten together with another man who was now my stepdad, and his daughter, who is 7 years younger than me. And so I think the mix between the alcoholism, the new family, all of these things just pushed me away from who I loved and who I cherished. The only people that I'd had really were my grandparents, and they're still my rock. They're my everything. But the things at home really pushed me to be with him and stay with him and crave him and want him. And that slowly progressed into almost an obsession like anxiety. So when he wasn't with me, I was anxious. When I thought he was talking to other people, I was anxious. And so that trust and mistrust that had been shattered in the later stages really showed through here, because that trust and mistrust that I had gained when I was 1 and even into 2 years old, that had been brought back up and shattered because I didn't know who to trust anymore. I didn't know, because the one person that I loved, who was my mom, she wasn't my mom anymore. I didn't trust her because she was incoherent and drunk every day. And till this day, she still drinks every day, which is really hard. But that relationship was kind of my getaway. And about 17, I was dually enrolling. I was still making straight A's. I was still doing so well. I decided that, my lifestyle with my new family and my mother wasn't what I wanted, and me and this gentleman had moved out together. So at 17, I was dually enrolled in high school and college. I was taking a CNA class, working 2 jobs, and living on basically our own. And I think this is kind of when everything went numb. This was about the time of my senior year, and so many things are happening and so many things are going on, and I just became numb. Everything was numb. My anxiety was always really high. My self-confidence was gone, and I was working myself to death because that's what I thought I wanted. And this is kind of when the relationship, the almost 4-year relationship that I had created with this boy that I loved so much, this became incoherent to me as well. I started to not trust him and have anxiety about where he was and all of these crazy things that years before I'd never felt. And so the divorce kind of triggered all of these questions and all of these worries that I'd never had before. And so that initially made the relationship end, and I moved out by myself at this point. So from 18 to almost 20 years old, I was living on my own in a 1-bedroom apartment, and I was working 2 jobs, barely making it, and I was partying a lot. And that's kind of like always been my outlet. And if you see my life and you look at my life from 12 until 20 years old, drugs and alcohol and different outlets have always been my way, because I felt like I didn't have anyone to talk to. Even though I've had best friends that I've had for years, almost 11 years now, 2 best friends, I still felt alone. And so this depression and this anxiety and all of these worrisome thoughts started to just overload my mind and turn me into this person that I never thought I would become. I was always outgoing and wanted the best for myself, and everything really caught up to me about this age, and I was really becoming this really sad person. But now, being able to look back and really see what happened to me through these stages, it's really shown me that it was just a rough pathway of finding out who I was. And in that time of me living on my own and being single, because I'd never really been single, I'd never really given myself the time to figure out who I was, one part of myself I did figure out, and it was my sexuality. Being able to be alone and really think about what you want in life, sexuality and who you want to be with is a ginormous part of that. And being able to tell myself, you know what, it's okay. It's okay that you're homosexual. It's okay that you want to be with a girl. And actually coming to terms with that situation of a question that I'd always questioned was relieving. And I actually had now in a relationship with a girl, a female, years later, a couple of years later after being single, and it's beautiful. The happiness that I feel actually feels genuine, and from being able to step back and actually take some time for myself, I was able to weave out all of the bad. And even though the bad is still here, my expectations for myself aren't so high. Everybody else's expectation for me might be as high as they were, but I've given myself the ability to say, you know what, I can do this on my own time. I can do my life and complete the task I want to complete at my own expectations, not anyone else's. And even though there's still some things that I haven't kind of weaved out and I kind of haven't figured out about my life, because this is the stage I'm in, this 5th stage, there's some things that I have figured out and I have decided about my life. And between my mother's alcoholism and my dad's narcissism, and my grandparents' great support and my friends' great support, you know, you're kind of able to figure out where you want to be in life and why you want to do the things you want to do. And I think it's a really beautiful thing to be able to analyze your life like that and see where you stand. Because my expectations and the roles that I have put myself in are finally becoming clear. Maybe a year later than they're supposed to, but that's okay. I'm finally becoming the woman I want to be at my own pace, my own time, and my own expectations, which is beautiful, which is the point of life.